Welcome, witnesses. I thought that today we would be able to talk about a lighthearted subject. I thought today we would be able to talk about the Carnival of Chris and about our heroes getting some much needed rest, about games, puzzles, rides, carnival food. I thought we were going to get to talk about all these things. But no. Another has fallen to darkness. So, we have some heavy subjects to speak about today. I suppose we should start where we left off, in the catacombs of Blackwood, where, surrounded by the stench of death and an oppressive, inky darkness, Digo finds himself alone, deep within the catacombs of the Blackwoods, traveling ever onwards, searching for his friends. He hears the familiar voice of his mother, screaming out, calling for help. His mother's screams and pleas for aid begin to fade into the distance, seeming to move away from him. He's drawn further and further through the catacombs, moving through darkened and damp hallways. Quickly, he follows and eventually emerges into a room filled to the brim with treasures. He finds some bracers of archery hanging in the room, and he takes them for himself. He also takes some amber-tipped arrows and some ice-tipped arrows off of a dead body that is lying in the room. But before he can do much more, he's approached by individuals adorned in robes, depicting a world with chains around it. They ask him if he has heard of their lord Volatar, and he responds violently to Volatar's faithful. So, in this moment, Volatar invades his thoughts. He encroaches upon the sanctity of his mind, and they are both transported into his consciousness, where Volatar appears to Digo as a legendary hunter with chains wrapped around his weapons. He tells him that he can help him defeat dragons, legendary dragons like Tiamat, if he finds the 13 keys. He says that he will give him the ability to tame these dragons and make them willingly bow to him as his servants. He strikes at the heart of Digo, playing at his insecurities and his ego. He shakes his confidence by planting a seed of doubt, challenging him by asking him if he thinks he will defeat the Dragon Queen with merely a single dragon at his side. Now, Digo is not quite intelligent enough to fully understand the implications of the statement. But there's a moment where the doubt does set in, and it gives him pause. That moment, that solitary hesitation where the door to Digo's empty mind has been left open for just a second, is all that Volatar needs to slide in and poison him. It's all he needs to turn him into a pawn, a plaything, a marionette. And Digo is now a fish on a hook, and all Volatar needs is to reel him in. And Digo makes a deal. He will find the 13 keys needed to release Volatar, and in return, he wants the ability to make dragons bend the knee to him, and he wants a weapon of great power. And in an instant, and without hesitation, the deal is made. The bargain is struck. And another falls to darkness. Another heart is claimed. A black sword made of dark magic, a red ruby upon its pommel appears, and tells Digo to feed it. That this weapon will destroy dragons and steal their essence, absorbing it into the blade itself. And this is what Digo has traded everything for. This is what he's traded our lives for, our world for. And the mouth of Volatar approaches and congratulates him on his choice to take Volatar into his heart, becoming one of his faithful. And in an instant, Nelius, Valir, and Heiko all appear as Volatar's faithful disappear, seeming to teleport in as the others are teleported out, perhaps by Volatar himself. There's a moment where he's questioned. Digo has to answer. He explains himself and shows the sword to Nelius, who examines it and finds that it's a cursed item, which, of course it is, and that it's unsafe to use, because the more someone uses it, the more the sword will take from their very soul. And Nelius explains this to Digo, who immediately surrenders the blade to Nelius. It transforms itself into a staff. Valir and Heiko are disappointed. They are some of the only two left that I feel I can count on. The feeling of shame, the feeling of disappointment and anger that they bear. I'm grateful for that. That means that there is something good that burns inside of their chests. There's a righteousness there that should protect them from Volatar's advances. Thank the gods for that. And thank the gods for them. There's now a lasting marker on Dago that indicates his catastrophic stupidity and foolish dealings, for he now has a sign of this binding agreement on his hand, a sword with a world with chains wrapped around it, the mark of Volatar. As the party is dealing with their wayward and corrupt friend, Valhir notices crimson-robed figures with weapons sneaking about, slowly approaching them, trying to stay hidden. As if making deals with an elder evil wasn't bad enough, these individuals skulking about in the room are from Thay, a powerful group of magic users that have come for the key that I knew the characters were holding. I just couldn't divine what it was. But now we know. It was Heiko's imp-hand necklace. Or rather, the gem it clutches. They take advantage of the party's discordance and strike when they are unprepared. I am sure that the Red Wizards of Thay have been corrupted by Volatar. Not that they have really ever had far to go. I'm sure that he promised them no end of arcane power and trinkets. Their lust for arcane mastery made them lose their way long ago. This corruption from Volatar, this corruption was inevitable. And as our heroes were fighting for their lives and attempting to turn the tide of the battle, Granny G was summoned to the fray. She came for Nelius, but was rebuffed by his new patron, Vecna, who forbade her from touching him. And the fight continues, and just as the battle seems lost, Digo's mother shows up and attacks, and Herbie also shows up, turning into a giant moonstone dragon. Our heroes are then teleported away and find themselves on a pathway in the Chris Carnival. And when they appear at this carnival, they see Lord Thamor with a contingent of paladins. Digo, not tired of being immature and hot-headed, begins to yell and scream at his mother for her intervention. Lord Thamor has had enough. He immediately silences him. He smells the corruption. He knows of the betrayal. He's angry. And he has a right to be. As Lord Thamor is speaking with them, they are interrupted by missionaries of Volatar. Lord Thamor immediately orders them to be seized by his inquisitors. He then immolates the leader in the name of Pelor, turning him to dust. And the rest he orders branded with the banishing brand and then pinned and hung upon Blackwood's walls. He's done dealing with the corruption. He is done dealing with this spread of Volatar. And we have learned that Irby is the god Kiris. Irby warns Chia that if she becomes evil, she will be his enemy. And Lord Thamor lands back before them and explains to the party that Volatar is a being of pure evil and does not care for anyone but Chia. Everyone else will be but a vessel to enact his will. Something to use and then throw away. And Digo, not having had his fill of stupidity for the day, begins to argue and smart off with Lord Thamor, who is nearly the right hand of Pelor himself. And since it seems that Digo will not listen, Lord Thamor summons Pelor and an army of Solars to attempt to keep him in line. But Digo is far too full of hubris and ego to be swayed, even by a god. It was unbelievable. His blasphemous defiance continued, and having enough with his disrespect, Pelor decides to take action. And despite the amount of disrespect shown, Pelor decides to show him mercy anyway. He burns through the mark on his hand, breaking it, and leaving a raised brand of Pelor surrounded by broken chains. He is no longer indebted to Volatar, but to Pelor. The pain is intense as the flames of righteousness pulse through him, burning the corruption away. And in the aftermath, Lord Thamor and Pelor both set to turn his heart from his corrupt and evil path. But again he resists. Again he embraces his rebellious and idiotic pride. Honestly, I don't see a way forward here. In the best case scenario, this hubris, Digo's hubris, will be the death of him alone. And in the worst case, it will cost the lives of multitudes of innocents, perhaps worlds worth. And knowing this, one of the Solars grab him and quickly raise him 600 feet into the air, threatening to drop him and kill him for his corruption. The Solar threatens to end his darkness and his evil intent for all time, freeing this world of any possible evil or consequences from his selfish actions. Digo finally relents, and the Solar puts him back down. Lord Thamor and Pelor then make a change within his heart, a forced change, but a change nonetheless. Let's hope it's enough to rein in his immaturity, for there's too much at stake to have such a loose thread woven into this tapestry. There is then an incident, a rather filthy incident that I suppose I can only describe as Digo's just rewards. I won't go into what happened, as I have no desire to rehash those details. But needless to say, if Pelor and Lord Thamor didn't temper the man's ego, perhaps that did. They then met Reku, a mountain dwarf barbarian from Thrak, I believe, a carnival worker. A very interesting character. He told them of Dragonmaw Castle, and together they've devised a plan. Purchasing carnival clothes, they plan to sneak in as a carnival troupe. After kind of hashing out those plans, they do decide to enjoy some rides and games at the carnival, attempting to forget about the troubles that they have faced and are set to face soon. Meanwhile, though, there is a darkness growing in their hearts. Something truly evil. It permeates everything around them, seeping into the crack in their own subconscious, probing them for weaknesses, seeking out ways to use their own insecurities against them. It wants to turn them against us. It wants to use them to extinguish the light, to eradicate hope and safety. And the scary thing about all of that is, it's very good at it. It's very efficient. And it just might be successful. I'm not sure if anything can be done about this corruption seeping into the hearts of our heroes. I don't know if they were truly prepared. I don't know if you can be prepared for something like this. Volatar has been around for all time. It's had millennia to practice its art. This is something they've never faced, something they've never had to. So I realize that I'm being harsh. But there's so much at stake. And they have to realize that. This is not a game. Until next time, witnesses, mind the fates and keep your destiny close. There are more adventures to be had if we can simply keep the faith.